Deep in the heart of Sherwood Forest, where sunlight streams through the canopy of ancient oak trees, a legend took root. It was the story of a man who defied kings and sheriffs, a rogue with a heart brimming with justice, and a bow that never missed its mark. His name, Robin Hood. But Robin wasn't born a hero. No, his story began as the tale of a nobleman, a man of privilege. Robert of Locksley was his name then, the lord of a great manor with lands stretching as far as the eye could see. Yet even in his youth he was unlike his peers. While other nobles filled their coffers with gold and their feasts with fine wines, Robert was haunted by the faces of the poor who toiled on his land. He saw their suffering, their hunger, and he couldn't ignore it. He ventured out into the village often, mingling with farmers and blacksmiths, helping where he could. Still, his life of privilege couldn't last forever. Fate, as it often does in the making of great legends, intervened. One fateful day, news arrived that King Richard the Lionheart had departed England for the Holy Land on his quest in the Crusades. That left the kingdom in the hands of his treacherous brother, Prince John. Under the new regime, taxes soared, farmlands were burned if levies weren't met, and whole families were banished to the shadows of the woods. Robert spoke out against the injustices, pleading with the Sheriff of Nottingham to show mercy to the people of Locksley. But mercy was nowhere to be found. Instead, the sheriff branded him a traitor, seized his estate, and ordered his execution. Outlawed, penniless, and hunted, Robert disappeared into the depths of Sherwood Forest where only the desperate dared to tread. But instead of finding despair, Robert found purpose. The woods were teeming with those displaced by Prince John's tyranny. Men and women driven from their homes, left with nothing but their wits and the will to survive. They were a band of the broken, but under Robert's leadership they became something more. They became the Merry Men, Robin Hood's Merry Men. Robin, as he began to call himself, trained them as a family, a brotherhood. There was Little John, a giant of a man who could split a tree in two with his staff, yet whose heart was so kind he once freed a rabbit caught in a hunter's trap. There was Will Scarlet, lithe and sharp, with a voice as captivating as his blade was deadly. Much the miller's son who once offered his last loaf of bread to a starving child. And Friar Tuck, a man of God who often joked that his second religion was ale. It was Marian who made the group whole. Lady Marian of Leaford, a fiery noblewoman with courage to match her sharp wit. She had long admired Robin's compassion, even before his fall from grace, and despite the risks, she left the comforts of the court to join his rebellion, her bowstring every bit as taut as Robin's. Together they turned Sherwood Forest into a sanctuary for the oppressed, and the name Robin Hood became a rallying cry of hope for the poor and a curse on the lips of the Sheriff of Nottingham. Robin and his merry men struck fear into the hearts of the greedy. Under the cover of night they raided tax wagons, ambushed corrupt officials, and emptied the vaults of noblemen who had grown fat on suffering. By day they would distribute their spoils, leaving sacks of grain and silver by the doors of starving villagers. Their legend spread like wildfire. Tales of Robin's pinpoint archery, of his skill in splitting an arrow down the center, became the stuff of bards' songs. Stories of Little John besting entire groups of soldiers with nothing but his staff reached far and wide, and wherever men and women dreamed of justice, they spoke Robin Hood's name. But legends don't grow without adversaries. The Sheriff of Nottingham grew increasingly obsessed with capturing Robin. He doubled the patrols, blockaded paths into Sherwood, and set traps throughout the forest. But the merry men were always one step ahead. The sheriff wasn't battling just a man, he was fighting an idea. And ideas, as the sheriff would learn, are harder to kill than any outlaw. The sheriff tried to tempt Robin with gold, with pardons, even with threats against the villagers. But Robin had no price. With Marian by his side, he reminded the merry men every day why they fought. "It's not about me," he would say. "It's not even about us. It's about a dream, that no man should live in fear of another." At the heart of the legend lies a duel of wits between Robin Hood and the sheriff. The sheriff tried to flush him out with a great archery contest, promising a glittering prize for the finest shot. Some say Robin couldn't resist the lure of proving his skill. Others believe it was his disdain for the sheriff that led him to risk everything. Disguised as a humble peasant, Robin entered the contest. He not only won, but humiliated the sheriff by revealing his identity as he claimed his prize, escaping in dramatic fashion with the help of his merry men. Robin's greatest victory, however, was yet to come. Word reached Sherwood Forest that King Richard had returned to England in disguise. Appalled by what his brother had done to the country, Robin saw an opportunity, a chance to end the tyranny for good. In the final and most daring raid, Robin and the merry men infiltrated Nottingham Castle during a royal banquet, where Prince John and the sheriff plotted to seize the throne entirely. Under the cover of revelry, Robin revealed King Richard's true identity to the assembled nobles and townsfolk, forcing Prince John to flee and ending the sheriff's reign of terror. Justice at last was restored. King Richard pardoned Robin and his men, offering Robin a place in court. But Robin refused, pledging to remain with his people in Sherwood Forest. For Robin, the fight wasn't about titles or lands. It was about freedom. It was about justice. And though King Richard's rule would bring a measure of peace, Robin knew the world was fraught with greed and corruption. There would always be someone who needed the protection of an outlaw. Even now, centuries later, the name Robin Hood rings through history as a symbol of hope, of courage, and of the belief that the rich are not above the law, and that the oppressed need not suffer in silence. His story has been retold in countless ways, changing with the times, but always reminding us of one timeless truth. One person, armed with principle and a bow strong enough to pierce injustice, can make a difference.